My name is Bob Galen, and I have a problem. You may or may not be aware of it. I talk too much. It has a technical term. Doctors call it bloviation. Sometimes it's bloviating BS. Let's explore one, how to detect it, and two, how to get rid of it. Come on down.
Come on down. It's like the price is right. I'm going to pre-apologize. Bloviator, bloviation, any blovy something has now become Bob's favorite term. And we talked before we started recording. Hopefully we can keep this on the rails because he really enjoys the word. So we're going to do our best. But continuing with our series of dealing with challenging teammates, one of the concepts is bloviators. And I happen to have firsthand experience with a very dear friend of mine that tends to bloviate. So before we go any further, let's talk about what the heck that word means, because I didn't hear it until, like a week or two ago when you brought this up.
Well, let's give a nod to Kim Scott, and Kim Scott of Radical Candor fame. I subscribe to her newsletter, and she wrote a newsletter episode a few weeks ago, and she talked about, I forget the title, but like dealing with or sort of getting rid of, but bloviating bullshit artists, basically. So it's not just it's not just the art of bloviation. You can be a bloviator and maybe like have valid information, but these are folks who bloviate BS and how to deal with them. Now, when I saw the newsletter, it just like it rang a bell. It rang a personal bell, but like I was looking in the mirror. But it also I've encountered quite a few of these folks in my career, and from different even nationalities. I remember I worked for a guy from the UK once, and it was very smooth BS. So he was bloviating smooth BS. So that's the context for this episode.
So just to make it crystal clear, so we don't bloviate on the subject, nailed it. We are talking about folks that tend to pontificate, but not only do they pontificate, they're pontificating like non-facts. And there's a goal, an aspiration to be viewed, portrayed as somewhat of knowledge, but in reality, it's hollow. So how do you handle that? That happens a lot across all roles within companies. Forget agile, just as an engineer, you're going to run into those engineers that have done everything, have seen everything. Often their resumes have this skills list that lists every language, every tool ever created, and like it's humanly impossible for anybody to be skilled at all of those. Yes, you may have seen those, yes, you may have touched those, but let's not fool ourselves. Those are
Right.
not skills that you have, those are things that you've seen or touched. And so that often happens across the workplace. So how do you manage that? How do you handle that? How do you detect it? Part of the time you might
Why
not
don't
even know.
That's what I was going to focus on, Josh. Is why don't we start with detection?
Okay.
And you started it. Like what does it look like? So I think a great example is folks that have these long lists of I know everything. Another thing is folks who do that verbally and are very superficial, so very shallow. Would be another one. Talking about architecture, talking about designs. It's really not defensible. There's no depth to it. Right. There's in fact, if you try to go deep, they'll deflect it and they'll bloviate some more on the surface. So that would be another thing. I would say folks who don't listen very well would be another part of the bloviator, the bloviation persona. Uh, would be would be folks who don't listen. Help me, Josh, please.
So I'm just going through my history and thinking of folks and common patterns. One is, and you touched on it, they lead with it. So they lead with these are the things I know. These are the things that
Yeah.
I've done. So it's an
Yep.
attempt to get out front and try and create proof that maybe isn't there. in hopes that there isn't an attempt to dig in and figure it out. So number one, it is led with it is, hey, these are the 78 things that I know. Uh, Often I find it a defense mechanism.
Yep.
Someone is worried about something, or there's a new peer or a new boss or new something. So there's this, oh no, I got to protect myself. So let me create this view, this persona that I am more than what I might be. And that's just a dangerous game to play, because time will tell and reality is going to show that the actual depth. I think that's what Bob and I have both found, is that the most valuable employees, peers, friends have depth, and they have a capability and a willingness to go deep to help
Yep.
address whatever
Yep.
problem it is, be it personal or technological or professional, whatever it is, so that that depth is really the thing that separates it out.
You said something about they go first, or they unite the list or something. I actually think they go first in the discussion too. They try to, and I'm guessing that maybe bloviators in general are extroverts more than introverts, because I know this is a stereotype, metacasters, but I think it's valid. Introverts are typically more thoughtful and they go deeper, whereas extroverts are typically sort of superficial and scattered. So broad, I know I'm stereotyping, but
All of the extroverts just hit stop.
I know. But what I'm saying is introverts take the time to sort of in their minds go deeper before saying something, right?
Yeah.
You think then say. That's really what I'm trying to say. Whereas I think extroverts say then think. Uh, and so this aligns with an extrovert pattern. If you assume positive intent, then a bloviator is just, in this case, is they're just talking.
Hmm.
But they have a tendency to talk first. Like let me get my idea out first. And then part of it is then they're neutralizing other ideas, which is the danger sign, right? And they're maybe by the strength of their personality or the strength of their you know uh, their bloviation, they're trying to control things.
Yeah. So going to the assuming positive intent, I do think there is, and I do a lot of coaching with team leads who do all of the talking, and they're doing it with good intentions, trying to, let's get to the solution of the problem as quickly as possible because I already know the answer. So let's just go, let's get it. And they're not trying to squash anybody. They're not being a jerk about it.
Right.
It's just, hey, this is the shortest path to victory. So let me just say those words. And in the unintended consequences are that those around them tend to shut down. So
Right.
there is unintentional bloviation where you're always the one that speaks. And what that does, what that has a tendency to do is shut folks down. And the most powerful bloviators, in the truest sense, if we go to the depth isn't there, is those that have the capability to say it with like confidence and belief to where everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then folks tend to fall in line. Sometimes those statements, those very bold statements that people line with or align with, aren't actually backed up by that depth. So therefore, things can get kind of messy, and you have that oh shit moment where like maybe we shouldn't have gone that direction, but that person was so convincing when they said
Right.
it. There, those are the dangers that you have to watch out for and try and detect for yourself as you go through your career.
I agree. I think there's two types or two paths. And what Kim was talking about is bloviating BS artists, which is, maybe with malintent or, clueless intent. But these are folks who are bloviating, talking too much. It's about me, it's about my ideas, it's about shoving my ideas down your throat. But then the ideas are, they're not sound. It's real, and they're making it up. And I would argue most of them know that they're making stuff up, and they're hoping that the amount of words will cover up from that.
Right.
Then there's another type of bloviator, a well-intentioned bloviator who is knowledgeable but just has a tendency. I don't know who. There are examples out in the world, but they're well intentioned and they have knowledge. They just have a really hard time succinctly communicating that knowledge in a way that's digestible. I'm an example. I hope I'm an example of someone who's a bloviator, but hopefully I'm not bloviating BS most of the time. Every once in a while, Josh will keep me honest. But in all seriousness, it's I think there's and you want to make this distinction between the two. She was leaning into the malicious part, and there's a lot of those folks. And in leaders, you see it in leadership a lot. Bringing it back to the core of what we're talking about in the Medicast nowadays. A lot of leaders, I mean, I think they're obfuscation artists. There, chew on that one, Josh. Right, but they're bloviating obfuscation artists, uh, and they're doing it intentionally, just to sort of mislead or have smokescreens or something to get their agendas to forthcome. React to my two paths and sort of the well intentioned and the BS and things like that.
I think there are a few well intentioned. I kind of lost track of what you were saying. I didn't. I'm just, just the opportunity was there. I had to jump on it.
I think you could have said I actually fell asleep for a minute with my eyes open.
But I think potential causes are leaders that maybe get promoted too soon and
Ah,
they
good.
feel an obligation like I have to have the answers. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of, and I've fallen into this trap before where as the VP of whatever, there's no
Yep.
one else to turn to. I can't turn around and ask somebody, like the buck stops here. So I have to have the answer. And I have found myself, and maybe you've done this in interview or something like that, and maybe you'll catch yourself now as you do it, of like trying to talk your way through the problem,
Yeah.
of like words just start coming out and then the mind's racing and hopefully you land on the right answer. So I know early in my career during the hiring process, this was something that I struggled with, was that if I wasn't sure, I would just start talking, and then hopefully I'd stumble my way towards the right answer, or I'd just stumble around and interview would be over. But that's a thing that you have to work at, of getting comfortable not knowing and
Yep.
saying I don't know. And that's where often just good people can tend to bloviate because they feel trapped, they feel stuck, and oh, I've got to have an answer, so let me just like start the process and hopefully something good happens.
Yep. One good thing is leaders out there, new leaders, or even seasoned leaders, is go last. A good pattern, even independent of you being a bloviator or not, I am. But one of the ways I handle that is to just go last, to tee up a discussion, and then really encourage everyone to weigh in. And then when I do weigh in, it's based on all of the good data and the good discussion. So clearly, there's not a lot of runway I have. It's really amplifying or extending the good ideas or gluing them together in some way. So one quick trick is just to go last and invite, and your team will appreciate that too. Right? It's giving them an opportunity to shine, and for you to see who is shining, right, and to grow your team.
Yeah, as I think about common bloviation examples of positive intent versions, it's often pressures cranked up. So somebody's presenting to the executives, or there's a board meeting or something like that, and it's not a comfortable spot. It's not a comfortable
Yep.
thing that you've done. And the amount of coaching that I've given to people is just like, just say less.
Yeah.
Just go in trying to minimize the words, and that attempt to minimize the words actually is the right amount. And again, it's that like, hey, I'm really trying to prove
Yep.
that we're on it, that we know what we're doing, and more words doesn't do that. Saying there's times where repeating your point makes sense to really drive it home, but every time saying the same thing three times, it's just like, okay, cool, we got it. Let's move on.
That's a great point. Like nerves, Josh, right?
Yeah.
Nerves and pressure is a common driver for it. And in that, every Metacasters in that case, it really is lean into, be aware, be self-aware, and just lean into short, lean into sweet. The other thing there, another trick is to say less, but then are there any questions? So what you're doing is you're you're deferring bloviation, and you don't have to bloviate in on the Q&A, but you don't have to say everything. You can leverage, so go last is a good strategy, and then go short and allow time for Q&A, and then you can follow on into the details based on what folks need, where they need the details. Hey everyone, I I have a new service or a new offering that I just kicked off. I just announced it like a week ago. I wrote a book 2 years ago called Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching. Contributed to something called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. So I'm really passionate about agile coaching and how to do it in a well-rounded fashion, how to do it really sort of intentionally. And there's a lot of bad coaching. We had a Metacast episode maybe a month or so ago that talked about basically bad agile coaching. And I wanted to do something about it instead of just grousing about it. So I created this masterclass. It's an in-depth masterclass. It meets just 2 hours a week for 15 weeks. And then there's some after class activity. So it's about a 4 or 5 hour investment per week, uh, but only 2 hours of fixed time. And I'm really excited about it. We already have 8 people signed up. There's going to be in class work, there's going to be practice, a lot of practice, a lot of feedback, a lot of coaching feedback. I am really hoping to make a difference in the world of agile coaching, and this is our inaugural. It's a beta class. I'm going to be teaching it with Peter Fischbach, who's a coach out of Germany. And so, if you're interested, email me bob@rgalen.com, and I'd love to share it with you more. Where else do you want to go, Josh, on this one? Do you feel good about it?
I don't want to bloviate on the topic.
I'd say call people out on it though. Like I'm now going back to leaders on leaders. I think do them a favor. I'm sort of channeling Kim Scott.
Hmm.
Radical candor is, if someone has a problem, she has a famous story that she tells that she said she worked for Google,
Hmm.
really senior leader. She said a lot, and Sheryl Sandberg, who was her boss, pulled her aside and said, "You say a lot."
Hmm.
uh, and she didn't really receive that feedback very well, etc. But that's an anchor story for her of taking that feedback. Gosh, where was I going with this? Shit, I just lost my train of thought. Josh, I lost
I
it.
mean, I'm totally on board with. You have to, again, as a leader, it's your responsibility to help people
Oh,
see the
that's where.
things they
Yeah,
can't see, right?
yeah,
It's, you don't know that. Everybody has those filler words. And over the history of the Metacast, I've worked hard to identify them and get better at not allowing those filler words to creep into what you're hearing right now. It still happens. I still catch myself and I get frustrated. But the only way I knew that was I started to edit and I started to see all of them. So it's a pattern of, you don't know you're doing it, but
so
you have
some
to have
yeah,
something, somebody say, hey, you have this issue. And if you don't, what kind of leader, what kind of coach are you if you just like let it be?
exactly. So give people the feedback. And even if it's BS, so there's two sides. Again, but if they're bloviating, give them that feedback and be kind. If they're bloviating BS, let's say it's well intentioned, but it's coming off like you have no clue. If you're thinking it, and then everyone in the room is thinking it, they have not only are they wordy, but they don't have a freaking clue. It's bullshit. You owe them that conversation. At least give it. They may not. It may not halt them, but give them that kind of that gift of that feedback, uh, and reduce it organizationally because it does erode confidence in the organization. It erodes understanding and clarity. Like bloviation. I've attended all hands meetings, Josh. I don't know if you have, where I was there for an hour and I walked away and I'm like, what the hell did they just say?
Yeah.
And I'm not being a jerk. Like I wanted to understand what they said and what it meant to me, so I could take action to support the strategy, but I didn't understand what it was. And so we want to really eradicate that as much as we can. We want to be self-aware of it. We want to not do it to those around us as leaders, and we want to help the leaders around us to sort of minimize that.
Yeah, there's a uncomfortable amount of an awareness deficiency around BS detection.
Yeah,
A lot of people are really good at detecting BS, and the number of folks that believe they can BS their way out of a situation is the higher than I would prefer, at least in the career path that I've had. And it's transparent. Everybody knows, and you're not really fooling anybody except maybe yourself. You're
yeah,
fooling yourself. You think that others are believing the BS that you're spewing, when in reality, everybody can see right through it. So that goes back to Bob's point of a good friend, a good peer, a good leader is going to say, like, listen, you're saying this, but like, there's nothing to back it up,
yeah,
you're actually hurting yourself, and
yeah.
helping someone understand the damage that's being done, I think, is going to be your best path in having that discussion, rather than just like, dude, you're spewing BS and it's annoying. It's like, okay, you're doing this thing, and here's the ramifications of what's happening, and I'm worried that you're just going to continue to paint this portrait of yourself that no one believes. And at that point, how's the rest of the organization going to work with you if they can't respect the fact that they
Exactly.
feel like they're being lied to?
This is one of the most important parts of this episode. I'm feeling, Josh, is this notion. I want to amplify, Metacasters, what Josh said. In technology, I'm not putting us up on a pedestal, but developers, technology folks, IT folks, they're smart. So everyone has a good BS meter. Technology folks have an ultra sensitive BS meter, and you do not want to activate that. So it's pretty destructive. It undermines your integrity, and their faith in you. So just stay away from it and be open minded to like give that feedback and get that feedback.
Yep.
We
Okay.
good, Josh? What do you think?
I feel pretty good. Again, I don't want to bloviate on bloviation.
Well, I do. 4 score and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new technical AI driven.
Mm.
I'm bloviated, baby. so so from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina,
And beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina.
I'm Bob Galen.
And I'm Josh Anderson.
You all shake, bloviate, and
Yeah.
bake. Take care, y'all.